Hello and welcome to the second episode of Masterclass Theater. My name is Nibling, and with me is Morkolf. We are both members of the Masterclass, the Sorcerer in Elder Scrolls Online, and today we're going to be discussing builds that we have posted on the Tamriel Foundry website's Sorcerer Theory Crafting forum. There are 6 builds we're pulling out, and we're going to discuss. I think 3 of them are going to be looked at by me and 3 by Morkolf, and we'll provide our thoughts as we go along. Mork, how have you been? How you been doing, buddy?
Been doing pretty good this week. Been getting some really good testing on the PTS. Excited for the upcoming weekend. Hoping to see a lot of people out in Cyrodiil. Lots of PvP and lots of overload going around for AoE bombing.
Oh man, yeah, lots and lots of overload. So one thing I wanted to point out first is a sad moment for the sorcerer community. Let us all take several moments and weep because of the nerf to Bolt Escape. For those who don't know, the skill Bolt Escape was given a slight nerf by ZeniMax in the previous PTS patch by having a 3.5 second debuff added to your character after you use it to prevent magicka regeneration at all. So if you spam it, which it used to be a very fun thing to do in Cyrodiil, it's not going to be very good on your magicka bar now unless you can spam huge magicka potions. So no more sorcerers flying across the screen, which I guess, the other 3 classes are going to cheer about, but sadly, sorcerers can all weep a tear. Mork, how sad were you about this devastating nerf?
It was pretty devastating, especially since I focus on healing. And that escape is always nice. I cannot regenerate magicka for realistically 5 seconds because you have to wait for the tick to start ticking for magicka regeneration after 2 seconds after casting it, or having the debuff fall off, rather to say. It is a very sad day for sorcerers everywhere.
Yeah, it's true. They did also kind of slap the damage and armor buffs on lightning form, but not very noticeably at all. And it's kind of funny because I think the thing people were complaining about lightning form was the movement speed, not the amount of armor and spell resist you got, or the rather pitiful amount of damage that the ability actually does. So hopefully that will get reversed and maybe they'll cut the run speed by 5% or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, at lower levels, especially in the last big beta weekend, you saw essentially every sorcerer running around with Boundless Storm, which is the more for movement speed, just because no one really had a horse that was leveled up at all. Even if you pre-ordered the Imperial Digital Edition from ZeniMax, you still weren't running as fast as Boundless Storm. At rank 3, I think it's about 33% movement speed. So sorcerers were flying across Cyrodiil on lower levels and being able to just escape on nearly every single class. Unless they like extremely hard CC, which there is a 5-second timer on right now in the game.
Right. Well, the first rank of Boundless Storm, I think, is 25% run speed. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about that. 25%, don't get me wrong, is still very significant, but it's nowhere like having 35% at all.
Right, but it's 10% faster than the Imperial horse that you get. So, even if you had access to that, sorcerers could definitely run faster than you, and it would take you 10 days of upgrading your horse just to be able to match speeds with somebody who had rank 1 Boundless Storm.
Very much so. And you could also sprint with Boundless Storm and sprint a lot longer in Cyrodiil at a lower level with Boundless Storm equipped, whereas horses run out of stamina fairly quickly.
This is true. This is true. So that might be something that gets fixed in the near future. We'll have to keep an eye out on future patch notes. But for now, let's get into these builds. I think I wanted to take a look at the build Atropos, the owner of Tamriel Foundry and Guildmaster for Entropy Rising posted. It's called the Reaver. It's a melee sorcerer that's focused on sustain with self-healing and mobility. It's a really good build. It's something I'd be interested in actually playing, though I don't know if I would go the same exact path as this because I would want to do something different myself. But overall, the actual choices are very solid. The racial choices, he points out that Khajiit are the best choice. It's true. The 3% crit chance is not exactly monumental, but that 15% critical damage is something that's going to be a real game changer for a class or a build that's going to focus heavily on critical surge, which is probably one of the best morphs in the game for any ability, in my opinion. He also points out that 49 points in health are the way to go. This is true no matter what your build is currently, unless they do some radical changes to enchantments within the next month. It looks like currently 49 points into health is going to be the way to go at launch as well. I mean, maybe they changed this. I don't know. They did change it in the last patch. So 1 point of health, 1 point invested into health is 15 points of health instead of 20. But again, the enchantments weren't changed. So in the end, it's still better to go into health. For his weapons and armor, he points out that medium armor for the critical chance and attack speed are the way to go. This is true. I feel like if you are going dual wield, you should look into the medium armor 5-piece bonus. That attack speed mixed with the bonus to one of the morphs in Flurry. I think it's Rapid Strikes. That should give you very nice boost to attack speed because I think the morph for Rapid Strikes is 18% attack speed buff, which is really, really good. He also points out that mixing in a little bit of light armor for regeneration and casting efficiency, I think this is actually going to be something a lot of sorcerers are going to want to use if you're going heavy or medium, to mix in a little light. Our class abilities are such where you're going to want to make use out of a lot of them, and having them be a little bit more efficient and having higher magicka regeneration is not going to be a bad thing at all. He also makes a good point about swords versus daggers. There is a passive in dual wield where swords get an increase to damage and daggers get an increase to critical chance. He's got some math there that anybody interested in this debate is going to want to check out and make a decision on which weapon might be better for them. I think the dagger is a really good choice, especially at earlier levels when you can't really maximize your crit as much as you can in the later levels. He also has his links to both action bars, and the skill choices synergize really well. I have begun actually playing a more melee Sorc on an Imperial character, and the ability to have crystal fragments proc when you cast other spells for half cost in an instant cast makes it a nuke that is interesting to use in a number of situations when you are using very small spells to do small buffs, like you throw up lightning armor or you execute somebody with Mage's Fury and you get that proc and you can just turn to another monster or an enemy player and just instant cast a nuke at them. It's good damage. It'll come out of nowhere because they won't see you casting it. That might be a very useful tactic for anybody who wants to go melee sorcerer. I think is to have crystal fragments to launch at somebody when you're in melee and you've just done a lightning storm or lightning armor or another instant cast spell like critical surge. But yeah, the link for this build will be in the comments of the description of the video. So if you are interested in looking at this build and seeing what you can do with it, I definitely encourage you to check it out. It's a really solid build.
Okay, so I will be sharing 3 builds, as Anibly mentioned earlier. My first build I'm going to share is called the Arch Sorcerer, excuse me, made by No Holland on the Tamriel Foundry Sorcerer Theory Crafting Forum. So this build is essentially a very strong mage, coupled with a second bar of being able to heal himself while get away safely. For his race, he chose Altmer, which is by far probably the best sorcerer race if you plan on doing damage roll in Elder Scrolls Online. For his ability points, like Niblin mentioned in his post, 49 points right into health, nothing else, just because it's such great value right now, and the diminishing return on the other two's attributes are just so low. There really is no need to put points into them with enchants the way they are. For his weapons, his primary weapon, he'll be using a Destruction Staff. He doesn't specify which one, but I think after reading over his build, I think you'll want to focus more on getting a Fire Staff or using his build, just because of that burning proc that you can proc off its auto attacks. And for his second staff, you have to use the Restoration Staff, because he is using heals on his second bar, and you cannot use Restoration Staff abilities without using a Restoration Staff. For his armor, he sides all 7 into light armor. For his build, I'd actually recommend probably putting 5 into light armor, maybe 2 into heavy armor, for that extra armor, because you don't get armor right out of light armor that much. And you'd also like the bonus healing is sometimes very helpful from the light armor from the heavy armor passives. So on his first bar, he has Restraining Prison, Crystal Fragments, Endless Fury, Pulsar, Inner Light, and his ultimate is Energy Overload. So let's go over these abilities. With the Restraining Prison, it's an Immobilize, and then adds a Snare once the Immobilize is done. Snares right now in Elder Scrolls Online are probably the best form of CC, considering you can almost always apply them, and there's no way to get them off except you use the support skill Purge. I believe it has to be morphed for you to be able to get rid of the snare, and the player must also activate it. Now, while you're standing in a Purge field, its time is reduced by 50%, but still, having a snare is always great, and there is no way to get rid of it unless you stand in the Purge field. Crystal Fragments, Niblin mentioned, hit at all the points, always great spell damage, and always knocks them down. I mean, there's no other way around it. Endless Fury, probably the best execute in the game right now. I mean, I think right now it hits for 800 damage before being critted on anything. It's a great finisher, and he has it more Endless Fury, so you get magicka back when you kill somebody, which is always a bonus, because if you kill on lots of people, lots of magicka is always great to have. Pulsar, I think it's consistently ranked the best Destruction Staff ability, because of its 2 morphs of either applying a dot that does 100% damage over, I think, 5 seconds, and the other morph of Pulsar, which reduces a target's maximum health by 10%. There's actually a ninja nerf to that in the recent patch 2, where it does not work on bosses anymore in PvE content. So that dot is definitely the way to go right now. So roll that dot if you're rolling Pulsar. Inner Light, it is the morph of Mage Light. It gives you 20% crit chance straight up. It's a toggle. It reduces 5% of your maximum magicka, but you can definitely withstand having the lost magicka by putting out this much damage, especially 20% crit. It's going to be great for PvP and for PvE. Now, the only thing I'd really disagree with in his first bar, Growly B, his ultimate, which is Energy Overload, which restores magicka when you need it. You're already going to be regenerating magicka when you have Overload going, so I'd actually recommend going to Power Overload because of the huge radius on it. I think it reaches out to 20 meters, right in front of you. It looks awesome. Looks like you're a Sith Sorcerer from Star Wars. It does great damage. I mean, people sometimes can't see you when you're casting it because of the animation. I believe that's going to get changed soon. But it does so much damage, and people really have to start worrying about it once they see a couple overloads go up from a huge group. On his second bar, he's running a very, very basic, really great getaway spec right now. He has Healing Springs on his bar, Mutagen, Healing Ward, Streak, Boundless Storm for his ultimate, he's Absorption Field. Healing Springs, great heal for healing a group. Gives you magic back each time you cast it. Definitely recommend it until you get a lot of magicka regeneration. Mutagen, great utility on this spell. When someone falls below or 30% health, it's an instant heal. I think right now for me it's hitting for about 400 instant heal when someone gets below that, and you can pop it up right back away when someone calls out that it has fallen off of them. Now, the biggest disagreement I have with him would be Healing Ward. Right now, if you watch our first episode, I go into detail about why you should not be using shield spells unless they are an extreme amount of health. Um, so Healing Ward, I'd probably replace that probably with Blessing of Restoration, the Morph of Blessing of Protection, which increases its radius and gives it a lot more healing and a lot more armor and magical resistance. He has Streak on here, which is a Morph of Bolt Escape. I'd probably morph it to the other morph, which is going to be a Ball of Lightning, which allows you to absorb projectiles behind you, and the absorption field falls right where you'll land. I find that very useful in PvP right now, as there are a lot of people, especially sorcerers, running around with instant procs of crystal fragments, trying to slow you down, and that field will actually absorb the crystal fragments. You will not take any damage or fall down. He also has Boundless Storm on here. This is another one where I disagree on. I think Boundless Storm does help you run fast, but if you're running Boundless Storm and Bolt Escape, you're kind of running 2 escapes on 1 bar. I'd probably sub that out for something maybe like Dark Exchange. He does not really run any abilities that require stamina, so being able to turn stamina into magicka, especially with the recent change to Bolt Escape, will allow you to get that magicka back and be able to Bolt Escape more to get away faster. And for his ultimate, he's also using Absorption Field, which is a morph of Negate Magic. I think right now this ability is not working as intended on the PTS. The heal seems to only be working on the caster, not the people who are inside the field. So right now the other morph suppression field is far superior. At max rank it gives 1600 spell resistance, which obviously probably gets DR'd. If you have over 1400, you probably an additional 400 to 500 resistance. So you get up to about 1900 resistance if you're wearing light armor. That resistance is great for dealing with magical casters. He also, for his Munda Stones, he said he doesn't have any. I probably recommend the Mage if you're going to use his build. The extra magicka, and it will help with magicka helps with everything: spell damage, resistances, not resistance, excuse me, spell penetration, and just magicka has tons of uses right now. And for his passives, you can see his SO head link down below, and yeah, that's it. That sums up the Arch Sorcerer from No Holland.
Alright, that sounds good. Although reading this, I do want to point something out. He mentions that all of the high elf racials must be gotten except the 15% staff leveling bonus. Good for leveling, but a wasted point at 50. You don't actually spend points on that. ESO had, for whatever reason, their builder doesn't take into account that all races automatically get their XP bonuses for a certain line. So anybody out there looking at different character builds, you don't even need to really worry about whether or not you're going to get that or not, because you're automatically going to be given that. Another thing I wanted to point out too was that at veteran rank 10, the diminishing returns start at 2,000 for magicka and stamina and 2,500 for health. So if you are working on builds, you can kind of keep that in mind as well. Alright, so that was the Arch Sorcerer. Now I'm going to talk about the Ultimate Assassination Bow Dual Wield Sorcerer. This is by a gentleman by the name of Mawin. He says that he's looking at this build to be an assassination machine and help his team in small skirmishes. So he starts off saying his armor is going to be medium. I don't know if that's going to be 7 medium or 5. I would recommend 5 medium, perhaps 2 light for something like this. He's got ability. His first loadout is going to be with a bow. He's going to start off with Snipe. Snipe is a good ability for range. If you're especially coming out stealth, you can do quite a bit of damage with it. However, he says he's going to be synergizing this ability with Daedric Curse and Rune Prison. So here's the thing. if you're going to be in PvE, Rune Prison is great. PvP, Rune Prison not so much. Unless somebody is a complete idiot, Rune Prison is not going to be very effective because you could CC break that by just clicking both your left and right mouse buttons at once. Yeah, I guess at a certain point you could keep Rune Prisoning the guy after he's blown his entire stamina bar, but you have to remember that when they do a CC break, you're going to have several seconds where they're immune to all CC. So if you plan on opening up with something like Rune Prison, you can kind of expect that he's going to come after you immediately. So he's also got Daedric Curse morphed to Velocious Curse because it's a smaller countdown timer to the explosion. I disagree with that as well. I think if you're going to look at an opener, you want to do two things. You want to get in the stealth. You want to have Surge. She's got what she has morphed to Critical Surge. And you're going to want to use Snipe out of stealth. That's going to be a big hit. And then after that, he's got Poison Arrow here. He can use that. The Venom Arrow, I believe, is the interrupt, ranged interrupt, which is going to be very useful. So you want to use those two abilities together. The problem right now that I see with this first loadout is he's got two abilities for his opener, a third for his, secondary attack. These other two abilities, they're nice, but I don't think they quite work here as he's going to think they're going to work. I think he might want to look at taking Crystal Fragments, especially if he procs the freebie cast. Well, not free cast, but instant cast proc. That will help add some damage at range. And as for a fifth skill, I would that he put Bullet Escape on this bar, which he has on the second bar. So, moving to the second bar here, he has Bolt Escape morphed to Streak because that does kind of disorient somebody for 2 seconds. It's a nice ability, and you can use it as a closer and an escape technique, although you're going to have to be really good about aiming where you're going to go to make it a good gap closer. It's definitely not as good as one of the various charge abilities for that, but it does do a pretty good amount of damage too, so if you can't hit somebody and get that disorient off, that's going to be pretty key. He's also got Flurry and Blinding Flurry. Yeah, I guess that could work for his particular build. I probably would personally go with the other morph to get faster attack speed, but I think this could work. He's got Mage's Fury morphed to Endless Fury. Yes, every sorcerer is going to want to have Mage's Fury on one of their bars for PvE, for PvP, no matter what. Because if you see somebody at low health, you want to execute them. It does so much damage. It does more damage if you manage to get a proc for Disintegrate. So if you don't have that ability somewhere, you're probably doing it wrong. Encase morph to Restraining Prison. Yes, this is a good ability for a close range sorcerer to have. So Encase has two morphs. One of them does damage at the end of it. That's a trap. You don't want that ability. It is a waste of a morph. You want Restraining Prison because, as Mork pointed out, that snare is nice. It's a long-lasting snare, and you cannot get rid of snares except with using Purge from the Alliance Aviatory, and I think Templars also have a Purge, but so if they don't have a Templar in their group, somebody's going to spend like 500 stamina or magicka or whatever it is to get rid of a snare, which is, you want to make the other people use their resources before you use your resources. Then he's got Lightning Form or Daedric Mines. I think Daedric Mines in this build is a trap too. It's a good ability for certain things. Open field combat is not one of them. If you're doing a keep defense, I definitely would recommend swapping out stuff for Daedric Mines or Fire Rune, morph to Volcanic Rune for more defensive purposes. But for for a tree like this, you want to go with Lightning Form, morph to Boundless Storm like he's got here. You want the damage mitigation, you want the mobility. Those two things combined are going to be really good for melee characters. He doesn't really talk about what Mundus Stones he's going to use. Probably in this, and this one's kind of open because he's gonna use stamina and magicka. So depending on what he wants to do with more, he could go with the Mage Stone that gives stamina, which I don't have off the top of my head, or the Mage. Either one could work. Or maybe he wants more run speed, so take the Steed. If you can maneuver around groups a little bit quicker, you can dodge their AoEs. You can get in and get out before they have a chance to react. That would be a good skirmishing type of player. But I think there's a couple things I would change here. But overall, I think he's got a good start, and I think this is what you kind of want to do. You want to kind of look at things and see how they're going to synergize with each other. Things that could look good on paper may not actually look that good when you actually get in game. So I would urge everybody to keep that in mind as well. But that is the Ultimate Assassination Bow Dual Wield Sorcerer, again by a gentleman by the name of Malwin, which is also posted on the Sorcerer Theory Crafting Forum. Alright, Mork, what do you have for us next?
I have one of our guildies, A6, with his Staff Master Sorcerer Ultra High Sustain Single Target DPS AoE backup build. The title is a little dizzying, but it's a very good build. But before I explain it, I want to point something out about Boundless Storm, or Lightning Form in that case, matter. If you get the passive under the Stormcall entry, Disintegration, it can actually proc off of Boundless Storm or Lightning Form. We're making it very efficient when someone's on low health. Now, low health is kind of vague. We do not know. It takes a lot of testing to try to figure this out, but we don't know whether it's 30% or 20% for low health. Because low health for Mutagen is 30%, but low health for Mage's Wrath, or Unending Wrath, is 20%. So it's kind of like a gray area right now. But it does a lot of, I think it does 600 damage, that Disintegration passive, which makes it very nice. So, going back to A66 builds, one of our guildies from Entropy Rising, this is a build that focuses mostly on doing high sustained single target damage. His second bar has lots of AoE abilities, but I think this is more of a PvE build, and as a PvE build, should be treated as one, and it has a lot of potential. His races, he recommends Altmer, just because of the 6% passive for extra damage with fire, frost, or lightning effects. But he also says that you can do any other race efficiently with this build. I mean, you'll just lose out on the armor, on the damage passive that only Altmer have. But I mean, any race can work just as good with this build. He has attribute points distributed right in the health. Very standard right now for how the game is looking pre-launch. For Mundus Stones, he's going to recommend the Apprentice for the increased spell penetration. Always a positive to have more spell penetration for PvP and PvE content. So let's get right into his action bar. His first action bar, he recommends having Fire Staff that's weighted. So the weighted enchant on a weapon is bonus attack speed. And he has a very set in stone rotation that he likes to use, where he likes to use a resistance debuff, use a couple light attacks, and hopefully get a Crystal Fragments proc by then, and be able to blow the target up. So having that extra attack speed when you do light attacks and actually add a lot to your damage. And I think some abilities actually, the animation's faster if you have weighted on your weapon. So his first action bar, he has Power Surge, Elemental Drain, Crystal Fragments, Mage's Wrath, Bound Armaments, and Energy Overload. So Power Surge, it's a morph of Critical Surge. I'm kind of surprised he doesn't have Critical Surge on this bar, but I think he's saying that you have a pretty good healer with you, you'll be able to keep up instantly and not be able to die. You also have the passive under the Sorcerer tree, which is Daedric Summoning, which gives you, excuse me, not Daedric Summoning, Dark Magic. The Blood Magic passive, which gives you back 5% of your max health whenever you hit a target with a Dark Magic spell. It gives a great amount of health back when you're fighting solo, or when you're fighting and you need that little passive regen. Elemental Drain reduces spell resistance to elements. I think this is something you gotta talk about with your tank. I believe the Ransack ability also reduces the target's spell resistance, which is a morph of the... I can't remember the name of the build right now. But it does lower resistances, and with the extra spell penetration from the Apprentice Stone, you'll be able to break right through the armor. Crystal Fragments, staple right now in our Sorcerer builds. Mage's Wrath, another staple. He seems to have it not morphed here, but it's probably going to be Unending Wrath for that magicka back. He also has Bound Armaments here. So Bound Armaments is a toggle ability which increases your armor, and one of the passive, or one of the morphs, gives you bonus damage to your heavy attacks. That's a great morph. It helps. I think it's 10% right now bonus damage to your heavy attacks. So 10% bonus to your heavy attacks is going to help you out with that filler. You don't necessarily always have the magicka you want. His ultimate is Energy Overload for regenerating the magicka. It seems like he actually doesn't have to use a lot of magic regeneration abilities. And he's actually wearing 5 light armor or 5 medium armor with this build, just solely for the attack speed increase. So it looks like he was going to want to get that magicka back, and he seems to be pretty set in stone with what he wants to do with that ultimate. On his second bar, this is a very AoE heavy bar. He's got Liquid Lightning, Crystal Fragments, Pulsar, Restraining Prison, Inner Light, and Energy Overload. Liquid Lightning is a morph of Lightning Splash. It does extra damage when you first cast the ability. Great for doing AoE damage and getting that damage out right away. Crystal Fragments, once again, you guys know the drill. Pulsar, it's great. I mean, you morph it for the damage over time, and it is able to do a lot of damage really quickly, and it pairs up with that attack speed very nicely from the Fire Staff. Restraining Prison, always great to hold a group together, and that snare at the end means you can cut it around if you need to. Hopefully that's not an issue. Inner Light for the crit chance, really good for AoE, it's what he explains it as, because you get the 20% crit chance, and you're able to AoE things down very fast. And you got Energy Overload once again to get that magic regeneration, which he seems to be on board with. If you want to look at the rest of the passives he has for his build, we'll have it linked down below in the comments. And Niblin, back to you.
Alright. So the third and final build that I will be going over today is called the Light Armor Sorcerer tank, also by U6. I guess today is a day where we kind of rah Entropy Rising guild members. Okay, so his objective is to build a Light Armor Sorcerer for tanking. Well, Sorcerer is really good class for this because of some of our abilities. So let's continue on here. He's got his racial choices. He says that Imperial, Nord, and Orc are the ultra tank races. This is true. Out of the three, I probably would pick Imperial. Imperial's got plus percentage health, plus percentage stamina, so you're going to have more health and more stamina than people who are picking races that don't have these two things, and more health is always going to be nice, especially both in PvE and PvP. Imperial's also got Red Diamond, which is a very nice ability that I think some people are kind of looking at right now on ESOhead with maybe some questions, but so I was in Cyrodiil the other day, and I looked at my character sheet on my Imperial, who at the time he was level 10, but since you were buffed to level 50, a lot of your skills and stuff, they also get buffed. And Red Diamond at rank 1 was restoring 41 hit points. 10% chance on a melee hit for 41 hit points. So my assumption is that at rank 3, that's going to be about 120 hit points, which is really nice for a tank or melee character. I think it's really strong, especially for dual wielding with faster attacks. Sword and board is also going to be nice because you can attack quite quickly. Two-handed, you are slower, but that could work. The thing that I would really look at with Red Diamond is that when you have something like Overload, is Red Diamond going to proc off of Overload? I don't think it is because Overload is considered a spell, but that is something I want to test personally because if that does, holy shit, that would make Imperial Sorcerers fucking awesome. Just run in there in a group and just blast away with Overload and proc heals from Critical Surge and Red Diamond. I mean, that would be fantastic. I would love it.
You just have to hope, though, that you don't get CC'd when you're using that. Or else you wouldn't be getting the healing back whatsoever.
CC break, brah.
What?
CC break.
CC break would work. Yep.
Alright, so ability points, 49 health. Yeah, I would definitely do that. You know, an Imperial with 49 points in the health plus his erasal he would have a substantial amount of health, especially once you get the Emperor buff if your faction crowns an Emperor and you're in Cyrodiil. I mean, you're talking about 3,200 hit points maybe in Cyrodiil. 3,000, 3,200, somewhere around there, which would you walk into a group with that many hit points, people are going to take a little bit of time to kill you. Mundus Stone, he's got a couple here. The Ritual increases the heals you receive. That's always solid. The Lord, which is more health. That could work as well. I don't know if I would go the Lord. I think I would honestly look at the Mage. Magicka might be a weakness in this build if you are going one of the tank races. So having more Magicka would probably benefit you in that regard. The Lover, that's going to be okay, but I think with heavy armor and light armor, if you go 5 light, 2 heavy, you will be very close to overcharging your spell resistance. So you should be taking a lot less spell damage anyway, especially with something like Lightning Form and some of the other abilities within the One Hand and Shield tree. The Atronach, yeah, the Magicka regeneration is nice, but I don't know if tanking with Ball of Lightning is actually going to work as well as it previously would. We'll actually talk about that more here when we go into his bars. For weapons and armor, Sword and Board, yes, that's a good tree. It's actually probably the best weapon tree in the game right now. Destruction Staff, it's going to be really handy for AoE, and he does want to put AoE DPS into this build. He's also got 7 light armor. I don't know if I would go 7 light armor for this build. I think I would go 5 light, 2 heavy. I think heavy has some things you're going to want. There's the bracing, I think it's called, for the 5 or well, that's for 5 pieces of heavy, so ignore me there. But heavy's also got health, incoming health gain for healing. You've got more armor and more spell resistance with the first passive, and you're going to have more health regen with the second passive. I mean, those 3 passives you won't get as much as if you had 5 heavy, but it's still going to contribute to your overall stats in a way that's beneficial to your character. For his first action bar, he's got Ransack, which is a morph for puncture. I disagree with this choice. I feel like Pierce Armor is much better. So Pierce Armor reduces enemy armor and spell resistance by 43% for like I think it's like 10 seconds. That's incredible, especially in PvP and PvE. So you're going to be buffing everybody's damage on boss fights, especially. That's going to be key. I think I would make that change, and the other thing I would also point out is that for PvP, if you're going to be a tank type of sorcerer, you're going to want the pierce armor ability, because if you go in there and you start reducing the armor and spell resistance of things like healers, you want to just charge into their healing and their casting group, focus on bashing them to interrupt, reduce their defenses. You can cause a lot of havoc in the backfield that will help enable your team to come through and kill the more valuable members of their team, which will ensure your victory. So his second ability is Thundering Presence. This is a morph of Lightning Storm or Lightning Armor, and it's good. It does increase the time that the ability is active. I think that I would probably go with this for a tank over the speed boost, but the speed boost is so nice in PvP right now, it's really hard to kind of recommend anything else until ZOS comes through and nerfs the speed boost, which I feel like they may do, which is unfortunate. Ring of Preservation, it's a morph for the Fighters Guild ability. Oh god, that ability is escaping my head right now. Where is Fighters Guild? Yeah, sorry. The Circle of Protection. Yeah, this is a good morph. It's better than Turn Undead. Unless you're going to be focusing on dungeons that have lots of undead, like maybe Banished Cells, I think Ring of Preservation is just a better choice. Ball of Lightning, which is the other morph for Bolt Escape, which is not Streak. This ability has these projectiles that pop up for a few seconds after you teleport for projectiles to hit them instead of you. I guess if you want to do that for kiting, it could work. But I still feel like if you want to kite, go with the speed boost for Lightning Storm with the Boundless Presence and use that instead of Ball of Lightning. At least if you use the lightning armor stuff, that's gonna your magicka regeneration is not gonna be fucked for 5.5 seconds, which in a fight, that's gonna feel like forever. You're gonna feel like you're not getting any magicka for hours, and you're gonna want to drink potions or do whatever you can to get more magicka. So yeah, I don't know if I would go with that for kiting. He's got Bound Aegis, which increases your armor as a one-time buff. Yeah, it's a good Bound Armor. It's a more for Bound Armor. Bound Armor is really nice, but at the same time, if you're using Lightning Armor, Lightning Form, I should say, that ability is almost useless because you'll be hard capping armor because you get so much armor from Lightning Form. It's also a toggle, so that means to even keep it worthwhile, he has to have it on both bars because toggles will stop if you switch bars and it's not on your other bar. So that's something I would probably look at changing. If you are going to use Bound Armor, I think the other morph that increases your heavy attack damage, Bound Armaments, is probably actually a better one. His ultimate Suppression Field, which is a very solid ultimate. I think that if you are going to use an ultimate for tanking and just denial for PvP, that's probably one of the ones you want to go with as a sorcerer. So second action bar, he's got AoE, he's got critical surge, which is always nice. And I don't think you need this on both bars. Bar and use it, and it lasts like 30 seconds. So don't really need to have it on both bars. Pulsar always solid, although the other morph for Impulse is really good as well. The Elemental Ring for the dot. Restraining Prison for the snare, that's very solid. I agree with that. Bound Aegis, yeah, I think I just commented on that. That's so. See, as you can tell, you're using 20% of both of your hot bars on one ability, whereas really with Lightning Form you could really just use that for the actual real hard tanking portions of the fight. And he's got Suppression Field again. I kind of disagree with this choice too. I think if you're going to want to have a build, you're going to have two ultimates to flip through to have different options. You don't want to I don't think you want to have the same ultimate on both bars. You want to have one ultimate on each bar for different situations. Maybe we look at the Meteor morph. Shooting Stars here. I think that might work. Or if you want to really do AoE, Overload would work, especially with Critical Surge. Or maybe even the Atronach if you want to do that. That has limited usefulness towards end game, but it still can be kind of beefy and take a few hits for you and save your healers some magicka for a little bit of time. But yeah, those are overall, it's a good build. I would make some slight changes to kind of tweak things out a bit, but it's definitely a good start. Mark, what you got next?
Alright, so for my last piece, I did pure DPS Sorcerer from Sorc. This is probably going to be more of a critique than it is actually going to be explaining his build and why I think it might work well together and the abilities with it. He has a build link right off the bat, first thing you see. But he really doesn't give you that much information as to why he chose what he did. I mean, if you look at his races are right on par. I mean, you got Altmer, Brett, and Dunmer as your top three, with Altmer being his first choice, just solely because of 6% damage buff. If you look at his attribute point distribution, he says for his True Glass Cannon, he wants to do 39 magic and 10 stamina. Now, I don't know why you need that much stamina if you're trying to do a pure DPS Sorcerer build and go Glass Cannon. I mean, you can put 49 points into magicka, just not as effective as putting 49 points into health, which is what every other build we've explained so far is doing. So he's losing out on a lot of potential health there by putting 39 into magicka and 10 into stamina in his build. So for his Minda Stone, he has the Mage, which, if you guys do not remember, increases maximum magicka. Always a great choice, so he's spread on par with that. So for his bars and armor, or his gear and armor, excuse me, for his weapon, he has a Fire Staff, because of the weighted right now, and the bonus attack speed from weighted is always great, and auto attacking, and for some spells, they increase the cast animation on him. For his armor, he has all cloth, all 7 into cloth. Probably put 2 into heavy. You don't need that much cloth right now. I mean, some armor is always a bonus. Some extra armor is always a bonus from the heavy armor, and not to mention it gives you every piece of heavy armor you have gives you bonus armor and spell resistance for points you put into the passives. So his bar, he has Crystal Fragments, Scalding Rune, Weakening Prison, Elemental Drain, and Radiant Mage Light. And for his ultimate, he has Energy Overload. So Crystal Fragments is staple right now. Scalding Rune, it is a morph of the Fire Rune under the Mage's Guild tree line. Let me pull it up quickly. So it explodes when someone gets nearby. So the Scalding Rune also applies a dot to the target once they hit the rune. Dots are always great, and I think the Scalding Rune right now is hitting for a really good amount of damage, so that's actually a really good choice by him. I also like the dot. But he's not pairing up with Impulse, so I'm a little saddened by that ability choice right there. So I'll put Impulse on his bars. So he has Weakening Prison. I believe this was an old morph of Encase, or it might be Rune Cage, but I do not think this is a good choice on this bar. I definitely think like an Encase morph, especially with the snare, would be a much better choice here. Just in case you do get that one person who charges into you, you want to be able to somewhat get away if you do not run Bolt Escape or Boundless Storm on his bar, which would probably be one of the changes I make to his bars. So next we have Elemental Drain. I mentioned earlier in the Staff Master Sorcerer, which applies the debuff for getting rid of some spell resistance. Always helps out to get rid of spell resistance, so throw power to him for that. So for his fifth ability is Radiant Mage Light. It is a morph of the Mage Light ability, which in the morph gives you bonus radius to stealth detection. If you're going Glass Cannon, I don't think you're going to get that much benefit out of being able to see stealth targets from farther, because they'll just get to you faster. You might as well just be able to get as much damage as you can, so I'd probably recommend going Inner Light with this build on this bar, solely because a 20% crit chance is an extreme bonus and helps out doing lots of pew-pews damage. So Energy Overload on this bar, I guess he has a lot of issues with magicka in his build. Looks like he hasn't had that much PTS or beta play, so I mean, I have not tested this build out, but I'd probably recommend getting Power Overload solely because of that radius. If you want to do lots of maximum AoE damage. And he does not have any AoE abilities besides Scalding Rune, which is not a very large radius when you apply it to the ground. So Zorc also did not put a second bar in his build right now, and it kind of saddens me because I hope he would have put a Bolt Escape or Boundless Storm on there solely to get away. So that's probably one of the recommendations I'd make to this build. And especially the attribute point distribution. I mean, there's no other way right now than to go 49 health, right? 49 points right into health. It's the most beneficial for maximizing all of your attribute points and all the bonuses you get out of that. And his build will also be posted down below if you wish to check it out. And you got anything else to say, Nibbling?
Yeah, I was actually going to point out that for his choice on Weakening Prison, that's actually a Rune Prison morph that increases spell damage to the next attack. That can be used against a lot of mobs, but not bosses. And if you want to go really Glass Cannon, I don't know if you would want to have that ability on your main attack bar, because you can't use it on a boss, and that's where you really would want to have that damage. You know, for abilities for Glass Cannon, I mean, I would just off the top of my head, you want Endless Fury, the Mage Fury morph. You want Critical Surge or the other Surge morph if you don't want free hit points back for critting, because a rotation for Sorcerer is going to involve heavy attacks, especially with a staff. You're going to have to do it. And heavy attacks with a staff hit very hard, but you throw in Critical Surge, you're hitting harder. Always a good thing. Like you pointed out, Power Overload is definitely better for AoE. It would be nice to have an AoE bar. Lightning Splash helps your group do more damage with Synergy. Impulse is always a really good AoE choice, especially if you want to go Destro Staff. There's options there as well, but hopefully he will have a secondary bar here soon. But all in all, there are other builds posted on the Theory Crafting forum. Fortunately, we couldn't really go through all of them today. If one or two of them get really popular here in the future, we could probably do a bit of a critique. But I think for the next episode, we'll try to talk more about another element of the Sorcerer, perhaps tanking, perhaps DPS. But I think for now, we're definitely going to go in and test some more things for the Sorcerer class. Like I said, my goal is to test Red Diamond with Overload to see, if that works together, and if so, that would be broken awesome. I don't know, Mork, what testing goals do you have for the next week?
I want to say I think my testing goal might be to try doing some Sorc tanking. Definitely want to maybe try out a couple different things. Like A6 build looked pretty good for Sorc tanking. I also need to work some more on healing, get some better gear so I can try out a different healing spec and see how that works out. If you did not catch our episode last week, I went into depth about my healing guide, and it's also posted on the Tamriel Foundry Sorcerer Theory crafting forum.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that as well, so people can enjoy the massive amount of work you put into your guide, which I think is on the second page currently. But definitely the Preserver, a PvP Sorc healing guide, will be in the comments for others who wish to be sorcerer healers to enjoy and learn from. But for now, that's all I have. You have any other final comments, Mort?
Not right now. We hit all the points that we needed to, and we described 6 builds that look very promising.
Indeed.
But I'd say expect a lot of changes to come within this month before launch.
Yeah, things are gonna get patched pretty quickly. I hope Dragon Knights get nerfed and Nightblades continue to get nerfed and Sorcerer just stays as awesome as it is now.
Sorcerers forever.
Masterclass? Alright, that's the end of our episode for the day. We'll see you next week with some more excellent Sorcerer, or not Sorcerer, Masterclass discussion.